G'day friends and fans, welcome to Dave Talks Stuff Ukraine War Update for the 20th of January 2025. Now the war continues, of course, but good or bad news is up to you. Russia again has hit Kiev hard. The Ukrainians appear to still be in peace talks. They do appear on paper to want peace, but they keep circling the drain. They cannot bring themselves to say what needs to be said. So instead, it's a war of words where we're not losing, but we're losing because of you. Give us more air defense. Your air defenses suck. Give us better air defenses. Give us more stuff. Give me more tanks. Hey, these tanks, I know they're uber expensive and the Russians are destroying them, but please give us more of these tanks. Poland may not be sick of them yet, but a lot of Polish people are. And Germany and other countries, the people are sick of them, but the bureaucrats don't care because Ukraine is just an expensive proposition in which the money must flow. And so the tears of the people, the suffering of Ukraine is ignored. But Russia's fired a cruise missile. They tried to make it out. It came from Belarus, but it came, right, airborne cruise missile over Bryansk in retaliation for a strike on Russian soil, reported near the power plant at Kursk. Zelensky cries, "No fair, you cut our power," hours after he attacked hours after Ukraine attacked the power plant in Kursk. Russia cries, "No fair, you blew up one of our power plants." You know, like, in the war of tit for tat, Ukraine may have the Western ear for now, but it does not have the where it counts, and that is on the battlefield. They are weak, and the only strength they have comes from the West, but they are so proud they want to prove they're not weak. Well, attacking countries does not make you strong or weak. It makes you a warmonger. And you may say, Putin the warmonger, Trump the warmonger, everybody's a warmonger, but poor old Zelensky. Well, too bad, so sad. Takes two to tango. If Ukraine really wanted peace, it'd be over. People would be signing peace agreements. This be just like when Europe went into Kosovo, which, Putin is teaching you a lesson because Putin's just acting pretty much like Biden or any president. Almost. Except, it is an annex. Unlike Venezuela. Although Cuba should be an annex. But that's a story for another day. Hello, Cuba. How'd you like to be South Florida? It'll be fun. Most of you, you'll be earning US dollars instead of begging for US dollars. Russia's made some advances up here. They're not the only ones. They're moving slowly up. The gap between here and there is slowly moving. Now, it seems to be a lot of disconnect. Right. When Russia talks about Kupiansk, they are talking about this little bit up here, but this whole area is also referred to as Kupiansk, and there's Kupiansk, and whatever, but they deliberately mince words because they don't want to be specific. They want to play word games just like Zelensky does, just like every world leader plays their little pedantic games, sitting there with 48 men sitting around the table trying to play chess against each other, while Trump just says, no, bro, wipe the board, I'm in charge, and they don't know what to do. So, of course, Russia isn't pushing their advantage, and in other areas, they don't have, an advantage. The Ukrainians have held them off because Russia does not use standard military tactics. Grinding is not a standard military tactic. The slow advance of the Russian army, where areas can be static for months, even years, and then you'll see breakthroughs now and again. But most of the focus here in the lineman area seems to actually be moving south, not towards linemen. And lineman's been a target since been announced as a target. Remember when the Russians were stuck up here, then they're stuck up here, then they stuck up here. It is a very deliberate slow advance, but there is advances. Like this area I've said for a long time has been static is suddenly alive, and other areas which have got once alive are now static. The battle for the control of the reservoir continues. The Ukrainian forces, mostly with mortars backed by artillery and rocket forces in Kursk, are keeping the Russians at bay. But the Russians and Ukrainians are trading blows in the city, putting pressure on the Ukrainians. Now, again, it's not overwhelming force. The Ukrainians are not in immediate danger, but they're in slow danger because as they try to defend their cities, they start losing the countryside again. Now, and what's left of Myriad, and now this settlement here is allegedly part of Myriad, but you've got Myriad and you've got an unnamed settlement which appears to be part of Myriad, which may have already fallen, but Russia's talking about sweeping operations. Now, they could be just clearing mines and etc. before moving in mass. Plus, they also got the high casualty rate they're avoiding, by the way, by not overrunning the Ukrainians even when they can. But there's times when the battlefield commanders say, look, I've had enough of these peons, wipe them off the chessboard. Yes, I know they're called pawns, I'm being deliberate. But the battle another example of Russia's odd strategy, of course, is the battle here at the rail yards. And the rail yards, road junctions, and of course we're talking about this little hullabaloo here, which technically is Pavosk, but Pavosk is made up of Pavosk and Heshnovokia and Makuilio and so forth and so forth. This little bit here, technically part of these two settlements here, but there's fighting through here. This is a industrial site of some sort on the other side of the railway. The Ukrainians seem to have, for now, just the luxury of sending men through here, river, reservoir, whatever, and just being genuine dicks about it. But it is a mass slaughter where hundreds of men are dying simply for the sake, it's not for Ukraine's sake. How long before more people realize that this is Zelensky refusing to leave power, right? As long as he can win the war of propaganda, the weapons will flow, and as long as the Russians look like taking decades to reach any red line in the West, which I think is the real situation, right? Europe is hoping to get enough people angry at Russia, but it's not working. It's actually, according to French television, the majority of French youth don't give a flying fuck about Ukraine, and said, we would rather Russia win in Ukraine than go to war. We will not die for Ukraine is a common statement. Now, to show you the strength and ability of the Russian forces, they can really open up. Whenever Ukraine tries a counter-offensive, the Russians open up on massive artillery to show you how much firepower they really have brought to the table and how restrained they are with the fact that some days, they only take pot shots, right? Some days there's only 100 or 2 engaged in some of these battles. There ain't big battles. This is a very low-intensity war. And, of course, you might say, well, talk about that for a missile strike on Dnipro. Yeah, but compare that to the 5 hours in 20 Americans, 5 hours, Venezuela, American-made Venezuela, their bitch. But they launched, in that 5 hours, they launched hundreds of munitions. Compare that to, so all this, right? Maybe just all this here was 5 hours for, Zelensky's got to be looking at the television and going, why won't they do that for me? 20 minutes, just 10. I'll take 10, And then he goes to, shows this to Volodymyr and Valery and Komiovsky and Bullshitovsky and say, looky here, look, this is Venezuela. Why can't you find me 20 men? Find me 20 men, big beefcake, He just does not understand, right? And I think a lot of people don't understand. And they don't want to know, right? How bullshit this war is, right? This is not even half of the conflict in Kosovo. This is not even a quarter of Russia's conflict. Chechnya was hotter than this. And because Chechnya still burns hard, right? They don't want a lasting resentment like the Chechen wars, where they're forced to go back because the Chechen, if Chechnya had left Russia alone after their victory, there probably wouldn't be a second or third, technically, Chechen war, right? Putin wouldn't have launched these 2-phase attack. Now, I think Ukraine was a 2-phase attack. I think, right, they attacked, rapid deployment, and made demands. Zelensky, tricked them into retreating, thinking they won, but then Zelensky tore up the agreement. So he launched his second phase, and this is the grind, which I think now is clear, right? It's going to be buffer zone in the north, right? It's going to be a buffer zone along here. Now, when it gets to here, right? Probably going to be Kryvyi all the way through, and that is maybe when they start demanding peace by the time, maybe 29, 30. No, I don't think it'll go that far. But if they did, yeah, I think when either Dnipro or Kryvyi or Mykolaiv, Russia's got to decide and start, they are talking about an end to the war, but they've got to start putting down the indicators of where they're going, how far they intend to push this. I know it will allow Ukraine to strategize, but you've got to take that into account. You cannot, if you keep the world guessing, you start ending up with a situation like in World War One, where the Germans say, well, we don't know what the British are doing and how far they're going to go, right? But if we lose our allies, our trade is gone, and at the time Germany still depend, but I'm just saying, Germany was looking at saying, well, we lose half our revenue, most of our resources, and yeah, England was a bitch, right? But it was France who triggered the whole World War One crisis, right? If France hadn't intervened in Serbia, right, France wanting to intervene in Serbia, they didn't go to Serbia. Instead, they attacked Germany, right? Declared war on Germany, and that gave Britain the license to go after German allies in the Middle East, right? If it wasn't for France, we wouldn't have World War One, right? But it wasn't for the English pushing French, we wouldn't have World War One. There's always interest groups, and this is why you can't take Ukraine seriously, because there's BlackRock, and they control the WEF to some extent, and the WEF controls Europe to most of Europe, bows to the WEF, right? You have the meetings at Davos, you have every year. They used to deny, Davos, no, there's no meetings at Davos. You're just a conspiracy theorist. Stop photographing those flags. Stop photographing those billionaires coming out of the hotel with world leaders. Stop coming up to Bill Gates with pies. And they've gone from, hi, the WF doesn't exist and Davos is a conspiracy theory, to, here's our website on the World Reset. And so you can't take any of this seriously when they have a Ukraine war plan reset / contingency agenda 35, right? To keep Russia bogged down in war for decades, to grind their economy to a halt so Europe can somehow reboot their green economy. And because Europe's economy isn't rebooting and isn't growing and flourishing and rising, and all their manufacturing suddenly becomes the most efficient in the world, and robotics are coming out of their ass, and all the people haven't turned into artists, streamers, and OnlyFans. The reality is, they don't know how to say no to their own bullshit, right? They created such a bullshit narrative in Ukraine, and they've committed themselves to this great reset, so they can't, accept peace, right? Europe and Zelensky just cannot accept peace, and sooner or later I'm going to see people not. But all right, sooner or later I'm going to see people not showing up. Okay, I know my viewership fluctuates. I really wish people just constantly watch the videos, watch them all the way through, recommend the videos, so we can get the truth out there. So many of you would rather tell me behind the scenes than make comments on the videos. Right? At least even some of my detractors are now realizing that Ukraine doesn't want peace and that they're pumping out propaganda. Look at this photo. Right? It's common sense. Some people I know could do this, where they instantly look for the flaws. Now, it could be the lighting, the shadows match, right? Sort of. There's a tree here, no shadow because it's in shadow, but these men are in shadow. But there's a light source, so I think the light source is the camera, right? They've put up a light source standing back. But what do you see? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. If that drone exploded and it would be all over the place and it wouldn't hit the ground, right? And leave no impact marks. These have been arranged, right? He's not lifting them up. He's put them down. There's no mark where that piece in his hand was sitting. He's put those pieces there, right? Maybe that spring might not leave a mark on the ground, but that control board would definitely be at least in the snow a little bit. That arm might be in the snow only a little bit, right? But that heavy battery would have pounded into the snow if it fell from the sky. Ukraine is full of shit, right? Ukrainian Air Force, right? 145 drones, but 126 were successfully intercepted. But they somehow destroyed our energy infrastructure. Why? Because those drones are there to fuck up your air defenses, get you to expend lots of air defenses, and then the Russians go, look, we're looking at the map of Ukraine lit up electronically by all our drones, and then they send in the missiles behind, and they hit their targets. In Ukraine, and then Captain Sky Shield comes out and says, my air defenses worked. My air defenses work. But when they fail, it's your air defenses failed. Military aid. Please, sir, can I have some more? Peace talks. Round and round she goes. Where she stops, nobody knows. You know, it's a fucking... I need a circus clown cart. Yeah. Peace talks are bullshit talks. You know, what... Alright, so here we have a mortar pit. Now, this to show you how dug in Russia is. Of course, this is deliberate, right? There's probably this is file photo, right? Yeah, but shows you, right? Nice image, you know, well captured. But it shows you, right? Russian forces dug in. It's a clear message that we're here to stay, and we're going to... You want to run around the battlefield with mortars? Fine. We can detect you, and as soon as you're set up, we counter battery, right? And, again, mostly it's a backdrop to show that the rate of casualties in Ukraine is around 1,200. Right, I said it would rise faster than this. It hasn't. But still, some areas of the battlefield are hotter than others. And some are still pretty chill. Right? But these battle groups aren't there to engage the Ukrainians in mass. They're there to conduct electronic warfare and defend the Russian flanks if Ukraine does something stupid. Again, like trying to invade the motherland. You know, they're just going to find that, 50,000 North Koreans nuts. Next time it'll be 100,000, then 200,000, and then it'll be a full-on invasion, you know. But everybody is pissed off that Russia is now part of the Gaza peace process. Why? Makes perfect sense to me. But of course, you know, the delusional left, it has to be our way and no way. You know, like everything has to be, you know. The left is the most American first there is, you know, as long as it's the American left first. But Ukraine has held German aerial vehicles, claiming they couldn't even take off during combat tests, Bloomberg reported. This is bullshit. Right. The reality is, right, and you look at it and go, are they serious? That's not even a serious drone design. Look at the propellers. Right? This is a failure. Whenever it's a failure, right, it's your failure. Whenever it's victory, it's our drones. These drones didn't fail. Ukraine, right, is playing childish games, right? They were jammed by Russia, right? They were probably warned. They probably said, look, you know, they're probably trying to fight, probably a test, right? But Ukraine doesn't want to pay the bill, right? The Ukrainians bought these drones, right? And then complained so they don't have to pay the bill, right? This is what they're doing. Poor performance of your drones, right? No, our drones are amazing. This is childish games by Ukraine. What they're trying to do now is, and maybe it is because they're expensive in Ukraine's eyes, but force, it's the give me. You give me, I don't care. Every time, like give me. Ukraine doesn't want to pay its bills. This is a regime coming to its end. Again, this is why I say fuck Ukraine. They're parasites, right? The only thing you can do with parasites is by very nature. Like even the Bible says you don't help these people, right? You don't help those who refuse to help themselves. Not cannot, will not. There is fucking nuances, right? But the left are absolutists. No, you help everybody. You give everybody money away because the grift is we skim, and then we pay protest groups. But then we get the pity party losers, the grannies go, we're having a pity party today. Who wants pudding? Well, if you want pudding, you go to our pity party and protest. Put on your pussy hat. But Lavrov's having none of that. He said the quiet part out loud. The world today? No. Just ignore that word, because Mike Rake's right. That was Biden. That was Obama. Remember all the drone strikes? Remember all the demands for Russian disarmament? Now, you could argue, right? And I think there's a pretty good case where America needs to start putting its foot down and realizing that the biggest threat to America are the Democrats, right? All these pussy party bitches, all these soy boys, all these pride marchers, march them straight down to the docks, put them on the next boat to Europe and say, see you later, alligator. Not. Don't come back now, you hear? But Mike Mate's right. All these strikes around the world are just emboldening Russia to say, well, me too. We can do that, right? If you can do it, we can do it, right? If you want to maintain your interest in Greenland, go ahead. Fuck Denmark. But stop bitching about us in Ukraine. That we're allowed to defend our interests. We have legitimate rights and then have been disregarded. Particularly by Europe, right? Europe's always talking about our interests and how they took Serbia and in Eastern Europe off Russia. Europe outwitted you. That's how the game's played, right? Lavrov, you win some, you lose a lot. But yeah, Russians are sick of losing, and who isn't, right? Who isn't sick of losing? Who goes out into the football field and says, hey, everybody, we're going to lose again today? And Liverpool fans say, right on, as long as you win the big games and get into the finals, But that's the reality, right? It's not everybody, has that attitude of, we're going to lose some games, we're not going to be worried. You lose some, as long as you win enough to win. But yeah, you're never going to have a time again where you have a big Manchester United team go out and sweep every game, win 4 bloody cups in a row, because every time someone becomes a real winner, has a winning formula, the other people, it's not fair, and they change the rules. Why? Because the world thrives on competition, not on, if America comes out and wins everything every day and stands there on the podium and says, this is our empire now, deal with it. People are going to get sick of it and the empire will crumble. So you got to have a constant competition. The problem is Ukraine is past its expiry date. It is beyond bullshit. It has gone to the absurd. Where Europe is trying to bog down Russia, trying to play little regime games, and Marco Rubio is just saying, nice try, but you ain't gonna beat Putin, right? You're just not, right? Oh, by the way, I'm going off to Venezuela now. I'll see you in a couple of hours. And Europe goes, what? And yeah, Marco Rubio is now king of Venezuela, and Europe is fuming. Why can't you do this for us? There it is, Davros. They've gone from lying about it to broadcasting it. But Putin's envoy is meeting with Trump's envoy to discuss the peace plan. According to the Politico and others, apparently Russia is wanting the 28-point peace plan, right, to, after a few little tweaks, to basically be presented. Basically, Europe saying, all right, here we go, we'll accept this peace plan. They don't want Ukraine's approval anymore. They're just saying to US and Europe, you guys approve this plan, right? You get it done. And until you get it done, we're just going to keep blowing things up. And Europe's looking at the cost and saying, well, right now it's a couple of Kinzhals, but today they escalated. Russia escalated today. And did they actually announce here? Right. They attacked not just they attacked the building. Right, the main facility. But they didn't say exactly what part of the energy hub. It was obviously transformers. They blew up a whole bunch of transformers. They take the massive power output of the generators and break it down. Right, you have the generators into 6, 12. And it breaks it up into more and more buffers, huge buffers, right, to absorb the power output and make of the generators, which is going to be massively fluctuating every second, into big transformers. And that electrical capacity is then distributed across multiple lines to multiple nodes and broken up in smooth power. Otherwise, your lights are constantly going to be flickering. But yeah, they launched some, I think, newer models, or the newer Kinzhals, not the older ones. I think this, what facilities were struck, what drones, yeah. And in other news, yes, I knew there was something else. Czechoslovakia. Again, Zelensky asked them to give them some L-159 jets, and they were turned down. As I said, Ukraine needs to grab some Yak-38s, Yak-58s, or some of those like trainer jets, and use them. This is actually something I've said a few times on stream. I've never heard it anywhere else, so take it with a grain of salt that somebody's either listening or using their brains. Right? To use cheap training jets, because they cost not just the fact that the jets are low cost, right? They're lightly armed, but they're low cost. But they're easier to fly than complex fighter jets. And it's just point and shoot, right? The drones can't fight back. And you actually, when you learn to fly a combat jet, you learn to shoot down drones. So it's easy to go from trainer pilot to anti-drone warfare. And it's the same jet you're training in, so you're more familiar with the aircraft, having to go through flight training and then flight familiarization and then combat training, right? You could go straight from, it's the same when you have Yak-38s, or 58, whatever model they have. They only have a few of them. The propeller planes, mostly those these days. They were used primarily as flight trainers. So you could so you don't risk your big expensive transports. And familiarization training. It's just fly by stick in a yak, and then you learn your controls and aircraft familiarization training. But yeah, so Peter has again had to tell Ukraine to fuck off and stop asking us for free handouts. But yeah, every day Zelensky's asking someone for handouts. And sometimes at multiple times, right? Every time they meet with the Americans, they ask for handouts, even though they've told to go fuck themselves. More and more countries, every day, right? Ukraine is that asshole. You go to a party. Ukraine's that asshole who's constantly reaching into your pocket saying, I ain't got paid today. Can you give me a pie? Give me a beer. Give me a beer. I need a second beer. I'll get you next week on the. Everybody's had that fucking mooch, right? You never help a mooch, right? You gotta learn to say no in this world, or you will be doormat number one. There ain't no special place in heaven for doormats, okay? Doormats are at the door. They don't go to heaven, right? You're just a performance. You're just a cunt if you're a doormat. You just give away everything because you have no pride, no common sense. You contribute nothing to the world, okay? You give everything away because you just want the pat on the head, okay? You're the biggest sinner of them all. Pride. Doormats are nothing but sinners. So thank you all for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Please support the channel. You support me on Ko-Fi, Patreon, buy my books, buy my merch. Thank you, each and every one of you. I see you all in the next video, and bye for now.